thank you for having me here. As you just heard, I am the executive manager for Urban Rural Rides, and we have been helping make wishes come true one ride at a time. And our slogan is that we change lives one ride at a time. So essentially, it's the same thing. Just to give you a quick background on who we are, and Kirsten touched on that a little bit. Kirsten founded Teledrive in Albert County, and I was with Rural Rides in Salisbury, Petty-Kodiak. And Debbie, who's here with us today, was with the Volunteer Center of Moncton, who had a ride program operating in Moncton, Riverview, and Dieppe. We were all covering little patches of territory, but not the whole region, which was hardly fair to the rest of the region. So we put our heads together and decided maybe we should work together, and we can accomplish more working together than we can working in silos. And I love that this is becoming more and more a theme in Southeast New Brunswick, that we stop working in silos and we figure out how to work together. Instead of duplicating services, we can complement each other and assist each other in advancing our combined goals, which in the end are to help people. How can we work together to help people to change lives? So those three groups came together to be now what is called Urban Rural Rides, reflecting obviously that we help people in urban and rural areas. It's pretty simple, right? Our mission, we are a volunteer-based transportation system that provides mobility for residents of Westmoreland and Albert counties. We're now expanding also into the greater Fredericton area. But our service is designed to improve the quality of life for people with little or no access to affordable transportation. And I've heard comments here today about, people that are disconnected, people that are isolated, people that don't get to go out and connect with people, talk to people, engage in their community. We have a lot of people in Southeast New Brunswick who are stuck in their homes, not just because of COVID, but are stuck in the home all the time. And for them, going to the doctor is an adventure. And we like to make it an even greater adventure because we put somebody in the vehicle with them that will, one, listen to them, two, have a conversation. Some of them are hysterically funny and have the client in stitches all the way to the hospital and back. So it becomes a social event, the transportation, not just jumping on a bus and looking, at your lap until you get to your destination and getting off. So that's part of what we do, is we create that environment of acceptance, of inclusion, and friendship. Our clients are mostly seniors, people with moderate disabilities. So I say moderate because we don't have wheelchair accessible vehicles at this point in time. And I'm just going to leave that there. So watch what happens in the future. Low-income families and individuals, newcomers, and really anyone without access to transportation. So all of those issues may or may not determine whether you have access to transportation, but there are people who just don't drive, or are scared to drive, or can't drive, or live in remote areas and can't afford to drive. So we try and fill in those gaps for people that cannot access transportation to get to medical appointments, food banks, grocery stores, in pre-COVID times, literally anything. Bingo, community events, hairdresser, banking. So helping people connect with their needs and those things that make them feel good about themselves. Maybe it's a new outfit. Maybe it's a hobby. Maybe they want to go to yoga. Once we get enough volunteers after this COVID mess goes away, yoga lessons will be back on the list. The process is really simple. So our clients register, and the registration process is free. Basically, we're collecting information like who are you, where do you live, what are your mobility challenges, what are you, are you visually impaired, do you need assistance, do you need somebody to come with you, do you have children, just to get an idea how we can serve them. And then when they need a ride, they call 48 hours in advance, and our wonderful ride coordinator, who's fantastic, matches that need with one of our volunteers, confirms with that client that so-and-so is picking you up at your home at whatever time. They're going to take you to your appointment. They will wait for you, and they'll bring you back home when you're done. So it's a door-to-door service, which is fantastic. And the drivers are just there to drive and to be nice, to just be a friendly face. They don't handle money. They don't know what or who or what anybody's paying or if they're paying or who's paying for them. That's none of their business. We deal with all that on the back end. We invoice the clients once a month, and we charge a nominal fee for transportation. So our minimum ride fee is $10, and when you go above $10, we bill at 25 cents a kilometer. So to give you an idea what that means, let's say, for example, you lived in Sackville and you were going to the Moncton Hospital. That's a 100-kilometer round trip. That's $25 for a round trip. I challenge you to call a cab company and find out what that costs. So we're not trying to penalize people. We're not trying to make it inaccessible. We're trying to make it accessible so that anybody who needs transportation can afford to have it. Our volunteers, who like your volunteers, are some of the greatest people on the planet and probably cross over. I've never met a volunteer who only volunteers in one place. They tend to give their time in a variety of places. We do a thorough screening process with them, which I'm sure you do as well, but we also make sure they can drive. We check for a license and a vehicle and, inspection report and stuff, in addition to the criminal record check and social development check. So why I'm here today is to talk about wishes, and we've already kind of touched on a couple of our wishes, so I am going to talk about those. But I'm going to talk about urban rural rides granting a wish before special wishes became a thing. Because I wanted to add some value to what we're talking about today. And not that these wishes are not valuable, but I do want to tell a story, because I do like to tell a story. Several years ago, when we were just rural rides, when I was just rural rides, struggling in Salisbury Petty-Kodiak to keep up with demand, we had a gentleman come to us who was starting dialysis. And this gentleman worked hard his whole life. Let's talk about regrets. Worked hard his whole life. He finally retired. He built this beautiful log home. That was his dream, beautiful log home. And within the next 2 years, quickly was bombarded with a myriad of ailments. He developed severe diabetes. He ended up on dialysis. His body was dying on him one piece at a time. They removed an eye. They removed portions of his fingers. It was not unusual for our guys to take him in and bring him back missing a portion of something. They started cutting his legs. They cut one up to above the knee, and then they started on the other one. So this is a real severe illness this gentleman had. And he was a bit angry about it because he didn't drink. He ate what he was told. He didn't eat fatty foods. He didn't eat sugar. He did everything he was told. But the guy sitting in the bed next to him, having dialysis, drank like a fish, ate whatever he wanted, and he was doing great. So he was a little bit angry about that, a little bit put off. If he could do anything different, I don't know what he could have done different, to be honest. So this gentleman comes to us and says, now I can't see. They took one of my eyes and the other one's going, and I need to go to dialysis 3 times a week. Can you help? Well, I think we had 7 volunteers at the time, and dialysis is a 3-day-a-week commitment. That's a big, big commitment. So we ran an ad, said specifically we need somebody to help with dialysis. So in the end, we ended up with 3 different drivers who committed, one to Monday, one to Wednesday, one to Friday. And then we had a few spares. So all told, we have 7 guys getting this guy to dialysis. Rain, snow, sleet, didn't matter. They got this guy in there 3 days a week. But eventually, as they continued to remove parts of his body, he got fed up and said, you know what? I'm done. Whatever's on me now is going in the ground with me. You're not taking anything else off. So he made that decision to stop dialysis. And many of you are in medical professions, you know what that means, right? We've got a very short window before it's all over. So his last wish was to go home. He wanted to die at home, but he wanted to have a party while he could still enjoy a party. So for this gentleman, his party consisted of his son and his son's family, a couple of friends, and his drivers. So they had beer and they had chicken, because he was going to have chicken, because he wasn't allowed to eat it, and donuts. and he was going to have beer because he wasn't allowed to drink, and if he was going out the way he wanted. So to have him, it's an interesting story because at the end, who does he want with him? His volunteers, right? And I know you guys experience the same thing. It's the people that care, the people that took the time to invest in your life that you want with you at the end. So that's our special wish before special wishes became a thing. And then we partnered with Special Wishes, with hospice, and had the distinct privilege of being part of a couple of really beautiful wishes that were granted. In September 2021, Antoinette, who was mentioned earlier, had entered the hospice house. And when you come to the end of your days, and you think about what you miss the most, or what is the one thing you wish you could do, or could see, what comes to mind? And I know somebody had mentioned seeing the Christmas lights or hearing Christmas carols. But ask yourself, what comes to your mind? Well, for Antoinette, as we heard earlier, it was the beach at Permet. She had spent every summer there since she was 4 years old. And no doubt it was not just because the beach is absolutely gorgeous, or the sand is soft on your feet, and the ocean waters, the sound of the surf, that she was longing for, but maybe also to revisit all those memories that she had formed with family and friends in those 94 summers that she had spent at Permet. When given the opportunity to have a wish, her son Peter knew exactly what she would want, that one last visit to her cottage at the beach. So with 24 hours to pull the whole thing together, her son Peter got busy inviting all of the family he could find that could show up on short notice in the middle of COVID. So kudos to him for pulling that off at all. Amazing. An amazing big surprise. But also, to complicate this situation for Antoinette, mobility was an issue. So finding accessible transportation was going to be needed to grant her wish. Urban Rail Rides, as I mentioned, we do not have accessible vehicles, but we do have another partnership. See, we're not working in silos. We have another partnership with Forestdale Nursing Home where they allow us to use their accessible bus with our specially licensed drivers. So they have to have a Class 4 license or above to drive those buses. So there you go. There's the solution. So one of our fantastic volunteers, who's qualified to drive that bus, picked that bus up and was prepared to make the journey of granting this special last wish. There's Antoinette there in the beach. So our driver picks up the van and journeys to hospice to pick up Antoinette. And the first stop on the journey was to visit the nursing home where she had been living before moving to hospice. And then they were off to the beach. And the van was met with a crowd, family and friends waving in excitement. And the weather was perfect. The sun was shining. The cottage had been decorated for the event. There was wine. There was laughter. There was joy and there was sorrow. And everyone had the opportunity to make one last special memory with Antoinette, thanks to Special Wishes. And Antoinette passed away on November 14th, 2021. What a beautiful day. I like the image of the little guy, I'm assuming great-grandson maybe, climbing into the van there in that metal picture to say hi. How sweet is that? And there she is. What a lovely lady. And I think those pictures are in your scrapbook. So what a wonderful memory for hospice to have. Wish number 2. And Richard mentioned this gentleman this morning as well. Gordon, who had been the truck driver for most of his life, asked if he could have a truck in his room. And the Special Wishes team were quick to oblige. He also had an in-house volunteer take him for a drive to see Christmas lights. Such beautiful moments of joy and memories. Gordon spent 4 months at Albert House, longer than most do. But the length of his time offered many of you the opportunity to get to know him better. And through those conversations, it was discovered that even though he greatly enjoyed the gift of the truck, and he really enjoyed seeing the Christmas lights, that maybe there was something else he wanted. Sometimes a last wish is longing for a place, like in Antoinette's case. Sometimes it's for an experience or an object of significance. But often it is to see a loved one. And as staff and volunteers got to know Gordon, they discovered he had a son living in the Fundy Royal Special Care Home that he had not seen for some time. So, for Gordon Palmer, his last special wish that his heart truly, truly longed for was evident. He wanted to see his son, Ronnie. Well, Ronnie, obviously a resident of a special care home, doesn't have a car, he doesn't drive. So the Special Wishes team reached out to Urban Rural Rides, who was more than happy, of course, to step in and provide that transportation. And the team contacted the home to make sure it was okay for him to travel, that there wasn't any special arrangements that needed to be made. So with that opportunity, we got to be part of another special wish that was granted. And our volunteer driver, who wants to remain unnamed, picked up Ronnie and brought him to the hospice on March 12th, 2022. So he and his dad could have one last reunion and time together. So Ronnie was picked up and delivered and had a most memorable visit with his dad. And they talked about trucks. They talked about pizza. They had a lot of common interests. And Gordon proudly displayed his toy truck that he had received from the Wishes Committee, and Ronnie just fell in love with it, of course. So they were given an afternoon of memories, and Gordon was able to say goodbye to Ronnie. And I think if you look at that picture, the smile on the faces say it all there for those two gentlemen. And it is, of course, worth noting that that truck has found its way into Ronnie's room at the care home, where he cherishes it, and it reminds him of his dad. So, kudos, Special Care, Special Wishes team, and the hospice for making dreams come true. And we have been very privileged and are very thankful to be part of this process. And we look forward to partnering with you for many, many wishes to come. And that's it from us at Urban Rural Rides.